I have a lot of interests that I'll kind of consume and then stop. And so starting at COVID, I learned how to shoot pistols, and I took it very seriously. I went through training, and I'm actually a licensed armed New York State security guard. So that's an interesting one. I make my own suits. I learned how to make made to measure suits, and I do that as a hobby. And I started learning how to be a carpenter, and I really suck at it, but I make my own furniture. So they're a little crooked, but right now I'm kind of all in on being a grandpa, and so every spare second I have, I'm putting my time and attention into that. So I like to say that I'm one dimensional because I'm kind of consumed with work, but if I separate work and my family life and my personal time. And once I do that, I also, if you're interested, I'm obsessed with cooking and smoking. So I definitely have some hobbies.
Uh, and now you shifted to become a CEO of a founder of a startup. By the way, how was the transition from executive? You were the CMO or Chief Digital Officer for Amtrust? Which one was that?
It was actually both. I started off, I was at AmTrust for 5 years.
Hmm.
I spent the first three as the chief marketing officer, and the last two as the global head of digital and innovation.
So now, being the fact that you are like one dimensional, right? How was the transition from executive C level in a pretty large career to be a founder and a CEO of a startup? How many people? 10, 15 people?
We're up to about 15 people right now. It was a very conscious choice. It was something that I discussed with the management at AmTrust. Uh, I'm still super close with them. They're they backed me when I started it. They really made it very easy for me to make the decision. Uh, carriers are and AmTrust is a massive company. When I started, they had 10,000 employees. Uh, they're a global concern, and along with that, you lose speed. And for me, I was obsessed with the speed of insurance, and I know that there's a better way, there's a faster way, and it's something that we all knew that I couldn't tackle at while I was at a carrier. And so I had their blessing, had their support to be an entrepreneur. It's night and day different, but it was by design. We're
Hmm.
able to be agile, we're able to be fast, I'm able to make my own decisions, and I think the real thing is I'm able to make mistakes. And this is not about AmTrust in particular, but I think all large companies, and especially in the insurance space, there really isn't a culture of failure. The concept of failing often and failing fast is really not encouraged. And the way I think about it is like on the spectrum of like 0 to 10, where if you're at a large company and you're at a carrier or a large wholesaler MGA, nobody wants to get screamed at for a big project and failing, whether I buy a service from a vendor or I start some new predictive algorithm or whatever it is. People don't want to get called out for having failed.
Hmm.
My approach is I wanted to make it easy, fast, cheap to fail, so you could try things out, and whether it's using an adage like "ready, fire, aim" or "try before you buy." Failing is fine. And going back to my old life of before insurance, of being a digital guy and an e-commerce guy, if you had a 2% conversion rate and a 2% success rate, you were an absolute rock star. The whole concept of having a 100% success rate with trying technology is just, it was unheard of to me. And so back to your original question, it was a very conscious decision. It's incredibly different. There's a lot of flexibility, but there's a lot of amazing things in support that come along with being an executive at a multi-billion-dollar insurance company. So there's pros and cons to everything, but so far, incredibly happy with the decision, and uh, it's as expected.
So why did you leave Amtrust?
So as I mentioned earlier, I was really focused on the speed of insurance, and my job at the carrier was to be aware and up to date of all the latest and greatest technology across the entire supply chain. And there was tech that I wanted to buy, and I was on the inside, I was on the buy side, And it just took forever with legal and governance and compliance and onboarding and integration. And you know, this is true across all large enterprises within the insurance space, where everybody was subject to these kind of heuristics of what has to happen and how long it takes. And having worked with APIs and with microservices, I would be talking to a vendor and say, "You have an amazing service. I want that, and I want to consume that, but I don't know why it should take 12 to 18 months to procure that, or why it should take six digits or hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy it, whether it's a POC or otherwise." And after talking to a lot of people and thinking about what really do believe is a better way, I wanted to go do it, but it was understood that this is the type of thing that was not core to what the carrier does. They're in the business of writing work comp and small commercial P&C risk, not building an InsurTech procurement marketplace. So discussed it with the management of the carrier and decided that this is something that there's a lot of merit to. And I went out and I left a really cushy, awesome day job to go be an entrepreneur, which I've done for most of my life. And I really feel that we've tapped into a better way to procure insurance technology.
So you jumped back to entrepreneurship. So you already gave a few hints here, right? So it's the cost of failure, it's the speed to market or speed of integration, and of course there is the price of getting a new vendor. So, okay, I think that this is now a drum roll and trumpets and everything. Give us introduction about InsuranceGIG. What is it?
So people ask me that question all the time.
Hey, that's your company.
Yeah, it's and I talk about this all the time. And the one conclusion I've come to is that once I start talking about it, and it takes a long time to really describe what it is, and I've been trying very hard to distill it into a soundbite. And we've got a couple of things that before I get into this whole soapbox monologue of what it is, but at its core, it's an app store. It's an insurance technology specific app store. Another way to frame it, maybe it's a microservice marketplace. And very often when I describe it, people will come back and say to me, "Oh, that sounds like you've built a Zapier for insurance technology." So at the highest level, at a soundbite level, that's how I would describe it if I had only a few characters. To go a little deeper, what we've done, and one of the main things that I realized in many years of being at an insurance carrier and talking to everybody across the spectrum in InsurTech, is that one of the biggest points of friction in buying insurance technology is the cost. And the way that I like to frame it, and whoever's listening, I'll ask you a question. When you signed up for Uber, if Uber would have said, "Please prepay $15,000. Give us your credit card. We will charge you 15 grand. You will have a credit with us. And every ride for $13, $14, we'll take it off of your $15,000 credit." The overwhelming feedback is that 0% of the people would have actually signed up for Uber if that were the case. But that's kind of the exact structure for every piece of insurance technology. Now, there are certain things like core policy systems that are massive endeavors, and they're huge investments, and they cover everything from A to Z in the insurance life cycle, and that's understandable. But there were so many times that we were talking to amazing data vendors or business processes or whomever it may be, and they had this amazing superpower. And I wanted that, and I wanted to consume just that and not everything else. Why do I need to spend $100,000? Why do I need to commit 2 years to that particular company for that service? And what ended up happening and what I started realizing is that invariably the decision-making process to buy that technology was not one person's decision. It was multiple people. So if it was a piece of claims technology, you had to go to claims. If it was underwriting, you had to go to, and the business unit had to get involved. And what ended up being a decision by democracy, and the digital technology and the services were really complex, and to educate people on what they are until you get everyone's buy-in That's one of the major components that just takes a really long time. And I started thinking about, if I could take away that financial impact of not making a business executive commit to spend $100,000 or $200,000 to put it on their budget or on their P&L for something that they can't 100% say that's going to work or deliver a return or deliver a cost savings, that was usually the friction. And there's a delta between people having that confidence that it's going to 100% work, and the learning curve to get to that point of comfort took a really long time. And I started thinking, well, how do we make this transactional? How do we make this not a huge risk? How do we, because it's all API driven. And I remember being at the carrier, we had a certain amount of people that integrated with AmTrust for their rate, quote, bind, and issue API. And AmTrust was one of the first. They delivered and continue to deliver really one of the best workers' comp rate, quote, bind APIs. And we had hundreds of partners that were consuming that API. But a massive percentage of them was the exact same thing every single time. The team at AmTrust was building that same integration and repeating that process, and it was incredibly inefficient. So I started thinking about, if we create this layer in the middle, what I like to call a translation layer, where any one of the people on the buy side, or anyone on the sell side for that matter, if they were to integrate with this middle layer once, they wouldn't have to repeat that time and time again. We'll do that. So by us actually building these integrations and kind of democratizing them and making them available to smaller parties. So one of our partners that I like to talk about is Relativity 6. They're a great data vendor in the world of work comp. They provide workers' comp classification codes. We integrated with them once, and now any one of the small agents that integrate with InsuranceGIG now has access to that service. So the way we like to think about it is, when somebody integrates with InsuranceGIG, it's theoretically the last integration that they'll need.
And that's another soundbite, right? Another phrase for you.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I have a list of like these sound bites, and I mean, if you go to InsuranceGIG.com, I have like advantages for buyers, advantages for sellers. So that's something that, but that's definitely one of the sound bites. If you take what InsuranceGIG is, and I'm pretty self-aware, it's not a super simple concept. It's something that if somebody really wants to take advantage and understand it, like, there needs to be a little bit of investment, because it is a complete paradigm shift of how insurance procurement is handled currently, which is a massive and overwhelming undertaking. But we're tapping into like existing processes. Like we did not invent APIs. We did not invent microservices. Now, I hate to sound like someone who's bashing the insurance industry, because I love the insurance industry. Like, I'm super passionate about it. When my kid needed a little bit of guidance as to what industry he's going into, I pushed him into digital insurance. I really love it. But I also kind of recognize that there are certain things that are just fundamentally broken about it. And one of those is that the insurance industry as a whole is 2 to 3 years behind financial services and some other industries. So recognizing that microservices are here to stay, APIs as a methodology of communication are here to stay. How do we really tap into that? Now,
we are getting better. We used to be 10 years behind fintech. So, and the industry is learning, and there is so much innovation there. So we are a little bit accelerating. It's fine.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, the pandemic and COVID, I heard a quote from a CEO. I don't want to mention his name because I'm going to butcher it somewhat, but, and this was like 2 months into COVID. And, the quote was something to the effect of, digital insurance accelerated 10 years in the past 60 days. And I really do see that it's true. I mean, if you look at the attendance at, digital insurance trade shows, if you look at the communication of what people are talking about online, and digital, again, as a tool, is something that's not going anywhere. And all we're trying to do is just tap into the best practices and the most efficient practices that exist across this industry and other industries and just take a fundamentally broken process that takes a really long time, forces people to make big bets when they're not certain that they're worthwhile, make long-term commitments, invest internal resources into things that they're not exactly sure if they're going to work or not. That's kind of all, you chalk that up to the many reasons why the process for building and buying tech just does take a long time. And it shouldn't have to be the case. And we really feel that we've tapped into a better way for anyone who buys insurance technology. And the thing that I love, and you talk about sound bites about InsuranceGIG, there are some innovations in insurance where somebody is coming and displacing somebody else, whether it's going direct, hey, where someone is replacing an agent. If we're doing predictive underwriting, they're maybe replacing an underwriter. We are just a platform. We disenfranchise no one. We disintermediate no one. We really are helpful to everybody. And that's really part of what we try to do, is be helpful to everyone that we partner with on the buy side or on the sell side. If they're buyers, we try to give them access to technology that they never would have had access to before, because the sellers were really whale hunting. And because it's the self-fulfilling, cycle, in that the sales cycle takes 18 months. And because it takes 18 months, the sellers of tech are going for the whales. And they're going for the whales because it takes so long.
And they're the only one who can actually pay for it. And here you are opening up with, a marketplace or a wider net. You're opening up new distribution opportunities, new markets. And you're not just disintermediate. You're not doing that. You're actually empowering many agents and wholesalers that so far been neglected.
Yeah, we're actually, I know it sounds so cheesy or fake when we say like, oh, we're so proud or we're so humbled. And I don't know, maybe you could help me think of a better way, but like, we really take pride in agent empowerment, and when I started at the carrier, one of the first jobs I was given was to start a, let's go direct model. And without knowing anything about the industry and just being like this pure digital technology centric person, it was like, oh yeah, tech could displace the agent. And, anybody who has a great user experience, like the agents are, they won't be here in 5 years. And I've learned a lot in the past 5 years. And I would say the path to success is giving tools that make the agent experience better. I definitely think that the concept of going direct, and there is a place for it. I mean, we see it happening, but when you get into middle market, when you get into complex risk, even myself, being somebody who is so obsessed with digital and technology and online and experiences, when I had to buy my insurance policy for InsuranceGIG, I called the broker and I went through it with him. I didn't use digital as a resource at all, not once. I didn't do any quoting. I didn't do research. I didn't do any. And I firmly believe that we're agnostic. I'm not, InsuranceGIG is not commercially focused versus personal lines. It's not focused on just distribution or claims. We are relevant, just like Apple as an app store. If you think about the app store, you've got Uber and you've got Waze and you've got Robinhood and you've got Candy Crush and you've got Wordle. It's agnostic. Apple has built a tool for people to create technology and people who want to consume those apps to have one streamlined, unified place where it's easy to build tech and it's easy to consume it. And we've just taken that model and applied it to insurance technology.
When did you start, and how, and what have you done since you started? Because it seems to me that from a vision, you've done a lot, and especially from the buzz in the market. Now I'll let you to answer.
Well, we love the fact that there's buzz in the market, and as an entrepreneur, especially with like the current work environment, we have a global and remote workforce, so I work alone in a box, and I for sure drank my own Kool-Aid, and we believe in what we've built. We have a really bold vision, and it's nice. It really is nice and encouraging and reaffirming to know that people are talking about InsuranceGIG, and we see it when we go to trade shows, and we see it. I personally see it on LinkedIn, and the caliber and the quality and the volume of people that are reaching out and saying, "Hey, I heard about this kind of new way that really helps everyone." And so I launched InsuranceGIG in July, started building a team. We've got people focused on partnerships. So when I've got a really good vendor and a creator on one side, and I've got a large buyer, whether it's an MGA or a wholesaler, and really understanding, well, what are your needs? What do you want? Because when we talk to a buyer of technology, the first couple of minutes, they don't fully understand what InsuranceGIG is, because everybody's so used to just the status quo. But when they really begin to unpack what we have, and when they hear kind of our pitch, which is, tell me the technology that you need. What are the challenges that you have? What are the problem statements that you have? Whether it's, I'm a huge wholesaler and I have 3,000 agents every day forwarding accord forms to us that have to be manually rekeyed. Or it's completely separate. I need business classification during the submission process. And when Tony's Pizza Shop is applying to us, he doesn't know his workers' comp class code. I need to get that third-party data. How do we get it? Or it's maybe digital certificates of insurance. And it's any type of workflow, but we basically say, what are your needs? And tell me what your IT team is telling you that 100% they can't or won't build. Give me that challenge. We will either go procure that technology for you from one of our partners. If it's worthwhile, maybe we'll actually help do the integration work. And we don't want any money up front. We don't want any exclusivity. I don't want any long-term contracts. We believe that we need to deliver value, or our partners need to deliver value day in and day out. And if they're not delivering value, you stop. And if you don't like the service, go try a different one. And don't lock yourself into it. So that message, that pitch is really compelling to people who in the past had to look at a lot of really good solutions, but make hard decisions of who they want to move forward with, because the decisions were really expensive. And not just on the cost of the SaaS, it's also the integration cost. So what we've done, and I love talking about, like, what's your superpower? So if you take a carrier, their superpower is underwriting. If you take a data partner, their superpower is querying the universe to bring in relevant data for that particular thing. And what boggled my mind is you talk about like your analogy with the cow and the farm. I often think about like this one data provider, a very specific insurance data provider that was building their own internal servicing and marketing automation suite, because they said, no one wants to buy my service because the data alone wasn't enough. They needed someone to actually power the marketing automation to use that data. And that was, to me, it seemed like the stupidest thing in the world, because that's not what their superpower was. There are companies out there, whether it's HubSpot or whomever, that are available through a microservice API integration. Why the flip would you need to go out and build that service? So it was about exposing that superpower, which most people have them that are API driven as a microservice. How do I consume that? How do we connect with that once, so anyone who's on our buy side never has to do that integration? Just like Apple. I could have, if I wanted, hired engineers and gone and created a whole network to different limo companies. Could have connected to different stock providers. It didn't make sense. Apple said, we could streamline this. Come to us and we will syndicate that really tough integration work. And now that the sellers of tech don't have to build a whole new integration every time they bring on a new partner, their cost basis drops to an insanely low amount, which allows them to now onboard new partners without any huge upfront cost. So I know I just threw a lot of information out, but
And
It's
I'm trying to remember all of my questions. Please continue. Yeah.
yeah, no go.
Okay. So before I jump to the questions about competitors, the ecosystem, and stuff like that, you earlier you used Zapier as the example. Many, for people who don't know Zapier, what is Zapier?
Zapier is a digital way that makes it incredibly easy to create what's called an if this, then that workflow, logic tree, where, and the real core of it, and what InsuranceGIG has really tried to undertake, is to be able to bundle and cluster different microservices into a workflow. So it's virtually impossible now. And anybody who's involved in insurance, uh, in the process of having a tech integration and a kickoff with one-to-one parties, could you imagine actually getting three people on the phone and saying, let's all build something together? It's virtually unheard of and impossible.
Just think about the procurement, just taking each one of them through that flow. That's insane.
And what we've been able to do is, because we've got everybody on our marketplace, everybody on our API proxy, everybody mapped from an authentication perspective, but also we actually map the data as each partner comes to us. We're mapping their data to ours. So what it allows us to do is we could take 3 or 4 different microservices from different companies and put them into a workflow and have that be repeatable and scalable. So you could say, hit company 1, do this, hit company 2, do that, hit company 3, pull this. Now let's take all the responses together and what could we do with that? And it's incredibly powerful, and it's never been done in the world of insurance.
Cool. So now let me jump back to the competition and the ecosystem because you talked about a carrier to try to build, and we see a lot of core systems and reinsurers that try to build their own ecosystem, come and create, Guidewire, Majesco, all kinds of, build a plugin that will fit with our stuff. What are they missing? Or are they a competitor or just something that actually they should knock on your door and go like, we try to build our own closed world, but actually we need to open up. Come and help us.
So I know I'm going to sound like some hokey granola, off the reservation type guy when I say this, but but those people who really know me know I really don't believe in the concept of competition. Because if you take any two companies and you look at the Venn diagram of overlap, where there might be some competitive things that they do, but I also know that there's at least one thing that we do not do where we don't compete with each other. And let's focus on that. We're in the business of extracting value and socializing that value to our distribution and our buyers. So take any of the companies and the core systems or the other players that have their own ecosystems. I feel like there's so much that we could do together, and we are working with a lot of these different ecosystem or marketplaces. And what most of them are doing are creating a marketplace that's very focused and centered on their ecosystem, on their customers. So without mentioning any names, you take one of these core policy admin systems that have a marketplace. It's let's go get a bunch of vendors that could work with just the carriers that are on our system. And if I were them, I'd be doing the exact same thing. But I don't run a core policy admin system. And we really wanted to build a truly open marketplace where whatever policy admin system you're on, whatever AMS system you're on, it doesn't matter. You could come to InsuranceGIG, you can create technology, you can consume technology. And I think that's a major fundamental difference. Now, with those ecosystems, the conversations that we're having with them is you've got 30, 40 vendors that you've already built integrations with. Great. Add those to the InsuranceGIG marketplace. We've got X amount of vendors that we have. Let us add those to your marketplace and let's figure out how to, build mutual value. So that's how I look at it. I know plenty of people will tell me that I'm nuts, but won't be the first and won't be the last.
Recently, you were at InsurTech Hartford at one of their pitch nights. You won the Disruptive Award or something like that. How was that experience?
So I love those events. I do. For me, I just, from an efficiency standpoint, I really welcome the opportunity to get on stage, even though it was 7 minutes and there's like 0% chance that I could adequately convey what InsuranceGIG is in 7 minutes. But 7 minutes is better than no minutes. And we got up on stage and there were 100 people in the room, and I got to give a quick demo and build awareness to 100 people in an afternoon. Getting that award was definitely a bonus. We really feel that we are disrupting, and to me, it was meaningful that the award was given by the audience and also by a panel of like very insurance intelligent judges. And yeah, who doesn't like winning? There were some amazing people there, some great vendors. And there were a couple of awards given. I have to give a shout out to the other winners because they have amazing tech. And the beauty of InsuranceGIG is that I really wanted everybody to win whatever they could, because they're not competitors. We hope that they become partners of InsuranceGIG. Every single attendee, there's a place for them on InsuranceGIG, either as someone who's buying tech or someone who's creating tech. And we want to be the rising tide that lifts all those ships.
And here is another tagline, right? InsuranceGIG, everyone is a partner. Love it. Okay, cool. So we're reaching the end of the episode. So let me ask you the question that I'm asking everyone. Can you give the audience a recommendation? It can be a movie, TV show, a book, a life hack, how to start carpenting, or whatever that may be.
That's an interesting question. So I'm all about the life hack. I mean, every single one of the hobbies that I kind of mentioned, all generated or originated from some form of life hack. You mentioned a book. My favorite book is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. You have it on your bookshelf. So
in the white shelf there. Yep.
Yeah. So it's not the type of thing you bring on vacation and read at the beach, but it's the closest in my life I've ever come to the Matrix. Blue pill, red pill, and reading that, it was a game changer. Let's go with that.
Fantastic. Mike, thank you very much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure. Good to see you, and I hope to see you soon in New York.
Gil, you rock. Thank you, brother.